This is the second video in the CiMPLE Strategy series. This one, we're getting into the specifics of buying the dip. The last video was just sort of covering how all of the pieces fit together. Buying the dip is the main thing, and if you watch the last video, you'd understand that everything else is sort of centered around this core strategy. This is the most important one. Ideally, you should watch all of these though, because all of the other things can add on to it. But if you are new to this and you feel like it's a fire hose of information coming at you and all of that, I completely understand. And so if there was any video to focus on, it would be this one. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to do is, this is the prototype we're using. So let me just explain what it is, what's going on, all of that, okay? So this is a prototype. The prototype is actively being updated. So the developers will push an update and they'll push it directly to this page. This was meant to be hidden for a long time because these changes could be, you know, a negative net effect on a user if they're not aware of what changes happened or if a bug shows up or whatever it is. But we've been doing this for so long that we decided we're just going to open this part up for anybody because we've solved most of the issues. And if you've seen some of the other videos that we've put out in the past on our Discord, in there we kind of highlight what some of the issues are and like, oh yeah, we're trying to fix it. Like, most of that stuff's all been fixed by now. This is not what it's going to look like as a final version. So in another video I covered this, but let me cover it again real quick. This idea of crossing the chasm, right? This is from a different book. We are about here, which is only about 2.5% of the total market that would even want to do it. We are getting very close to the minimum feature set. So we're going to be able to get about 16% of the total market that would be accepting this prototype, right? But that's only 16% of the market. The other 84% of the market would look at this and say, this looks terrible. Now, if you understand how much money you can make, maybe you tolerate the fact that it looks terrible. But the way that this has happened is it started with using a template that existed on the internet and saying, okay, there's a graph here and there's data there and let's just use that. Okay, so we use that. Okay, now let's put in the D3 graph and, you know, all the things. It's just been stacking on top of it. When we actually get to like this point, the whole user interface is going to look totally different. The graph, like, fundamentally is going to perform the same, but like, for example, all of this information is displayed and like half of it's completely unnecessary for the user. It's more for us who are building it to be able to recreate some of these things in spreadsheets. But a long time ago, we stopped needing to even do things in spreadsheets because we solved all the other bugs, right? So one example of it, by the way, was this idea right here of being able to buy or sell less than the exact amount that you should. That was a reason to recreate this in spreadsheets, is to calculate that. And I'll get into that in a second. But my larger point is that a lot of this is going away. The history, this is not actual history. This is just like, if you hit the save to table, it'll basically save this table or this information here so that you can quickly turn around and put it back up there, right? So if you made a change and then you would restore it, like, that's how you would do it. This is not how it's going to be done in real life, right? Number one, these are all fake transactions. You can do real transactions on this page, right? In order to do that, you would click the network, choose Matic, then from here you'd get a drop down and you choose your Instadap account, and then it would load in here with your real information, right? And so this isn't necessarily a tutorial on how to do it. It's more of like, what is the strategy, right? So there's a separate video called the CiMPLE Journey, and that video series covers how you actually get to being able to use it. But these videos would be, you know, 90 minutes long, and there'd be something, you know, oh, somewhere around 57 minutes, there's this thing that you should watch, right? Like, so we try to make these as modular as we can. So the instructions of how to set it up, go watch that video. The journey is like the idea of you have to get to Polygon instead of the ETH mainnet, right? And if you're watching this video before you watch the journey, like, that may not even make sense to you. But watch that video to figure out how to actually get your assets on here and how to do real trades, right? So this video is more of philosophy and understanding strategy so you can master the strategy. So real quick on it, we are using Aave. Aave is a banking system. We're doing it on Polygon, but fundamentally, like, nothing changes if you wanted to do this on Solana with something else and you just use the calculator to figure out how much you should do and you put in, you know, all of the data, and then the answer is the answer, and however you execute it, however you execute it, right? So the strategy is a little bit separated from the interface. However, the interface is being built to make this strategy as simple as possible, right? Okay, so let's just go over the strategy real quick. Blank page, and we're gonna use ETH in this example. We've been using Bitcoin and some of the other parts of this video, but we're gonna switch to ETH for this. And so we click the ETH button, right? And it fills in the data here, except for we didn't import any of our data from our Instadap account, and we're going to manually put in data here. Okay, so we put in 1, and it's telling us the position's going to liquidate because in real life there is no account, right? So this is trying to do a real trade, and it's saying there is no account, so you can't take on any debt, and it'll liquidate because you don't have any assets, right? So just be aware that this error message is going to show up if you do anything fake, right? The real stuff, it will only give you the error message when you actually need to get the error message, right? Okay, so let's go into the strategy a little bit. Let's click this button. Now that allows me to edit this, right? Which, let me just explain what we're looking at, right? So historic max price, also referred to as all-time high. We're probably going to change the text to say all-time high because I think people understand that a little bit better. We have been playing around with how much should the price drop before the user starts buying. And there's the same thing with like selling, like, you know, you want to sell at higher prices. So we kind of, originally it was like a 35% drop. We dropped to a 15% drop before you start buying. So let's just leave it there for now. So you've got the all-time high or historic max price. You've got the current price, which we checked this box. Now we can change it. Otherwise it's subscribed. And as the price gets updated in real time, it gets updated on this page, right? So if you were to just sit back once you get all this set up, you would just click a button when the price changes, right? So for example, let's do a fake buy here, and you don't understand everything that's going on, but that's fine. So I'm gonna click this button right here, which allows me to edit it, and then I can come in here. Well, actually, before I even edit it, let's just go through these again. Start buy price is 15% off of this. You can change it to whatever you want. If you think that's too high, then you can change this to some lower amount, and you won't start buying until there, and it'll just adjust it on the graph, and then it'll still do all of the calculations based on whatever you set it up as. The next thing is the liquidation price. By default, that is 25% of the historic max price. That is the main thing that you need to pay attention to. So if it's 12, I'm just gonna round up to 1250 because I can do that math in my head. If it was 1250, that would be exactly $1,000 worth of debt per token that you could take on, right? So this next thing, if you are struggling to understand all of this, don't even consider messing with this. But if you are a more advanced user, then you can start to modify this. And the way that you would modify it is, let's say that it's $1,000 worth of debt per token based on this liquidation price. So it's saying, where do you spend half of that 1,000, which is 500? Where do you spend the first 500? Where do you spend the second 500? And by adjusting this number, what you can do is put more of the debt in the upper range if you think it's never going to hit the lower range. This would be advantageous if you set a really low liquidation price. Then you could still put most of the debt from that really low liquidation price in a range that you think it'll actually trade at. And so that's where you can modify this. If you're a newbie, be aware of what these default settings are, because there's downside consequences from the choice of what these numbers are, right? And those consequences could be positive in the fact that it could help you multiply faster, or it could be negative in the fact that it could force you to be liquidated if you don't have any sort of insurance, which is the other videos, right? Or any other strategy like that set up to prevent the liquidations, then it could be negative. So you have to be aware of what these things mean. So as this video is talking about sort of like the philosophy of everything that's going on, what I want to do, and I'll give you the most extreme, we'll do it with the defaults. The stop buying is at 1684. So since I can edit the price, I'm going to put the current price at 1700. And one of the things that you'll notice that when the price went to 1700 is that you've got this stop buy price. It's off by about $16 right here, right? Like it's somewhere really close to there. But what I want to point out is that the amount of debt that you take on at the stop buy price, which the default for this is 35% of the max price. So there's a 10% gap from 35% of the max price to 25% of the max price where you are not buying at all. And what that's doing is it's saying how much debt could you have, and if it was $1,250, that would be $1,000. So it's saying if you took on $1,000 worth of debt at this price, that would end up being 80% at this price, right? So this gray dotted line tells you what the debt will be if you make the purchase. Then once you make the purchase, let's do a fake buy, okay? So you make the purchase, and to be clear, we had 1 token, now we have 2.3. Right? So we bought more than we even had, but then we supplied those tokens. So we had 1 token, now we have 1.3 extra tokens for 2.3 total. So even though we took on debt of 2,200, which is what it would have cost to buy 1.3 at 1,700, right? So even though we took on that as a debt, we ended up buying 1.3 more tokens, right? So let's take the price and let's go up to the max, historic max. So let's copy this and let's paste it there and see what that says, okay? So it's selling at the absolute top of there, and let's do a fake sell. And now we went from 1 token to 1.84 tokens, right? So we increased by 84, almost 85% increase in the quantity of tokens with 1 purchase and 1 sale, right? So it's buying at the lowest, selling at the highest, right? So it is a bit of an extreme example there, but the more realistic outcome is for you to do something like this. So we put it back to 1 token, no debt. This still says that's the current price, but let's drop to, let's say 3,500, and let's say that's what the price is when you determine that you want to start buying, okay? And so with your 1 token and no debt, if you go all the way out, it will tell you that you should buy 0.08, which is $282 worth of debt at that price. Now this is higher than it currently is, right? Not higher than it's ever been, because this is the highest it's ever been, but higher than it currently is. And so we're doing a fake purchase here, and you can see this dotted gray line will tell you if you took on this $282 worth of debt, then this dotted gray line shows you what $282 worth of debt is as a loan-to-value percentage. See the loan-to-value percentage down here at the various price points. So as the price drops, the percentage loan to value increases because the value of your assets decrease. So right now you have 1 token worth 3,500, but if your 1 token is worth 2,000, then your $282 worth of debt is a higher percentage loan to value, right? So this gray dotted line tells you what it's going to be. This green line tells you what's the current price. This dot allows you to click and drag. Now if you see, and let's do a fake buy this way. So what this is doing is this is saying to buy some, right? But it's not buying the full amount that you can to get onto the curve. Now the reason why you might want to do that, and I'll just do a fake one just to show you, is that it creates an intersection point, okay? So if this red line, okay, the blue dot is where you're currently at on the red line, but if the blue dot on this red line is below the intersection point, then you should buy to get onto the curve. So by selecting some amount that is less than the full amount, what you're doing is just redefining what that will be, right? So if we do another fake buy there, right, it just moved the intersection point. So if you read what this says, this calculation says you should switch from buying to selling when the price hits 3,071. And so the reason why you'd want to do that, of buying less or selling less, is because potentially there's still more debt that could be used, right? So yeah, let's bring it back to 1 token, okay? And let's get rid of the debt. And so we have no debt. And if the current price is 3,500, we could take on that 282, so same numbers we've been using. And if you bring it up here, it's only bringing in 129, right? So if it's 282, that's $53 worth of debt that isn't being used right now, which means if the price goes down to 3,300, let's say, okay, then if you did that fake buy there, you'd have an extra 52 here compared to if you bought the full amount, right? So all it's doing is just making partial bets that allow you to go even deeper later. So it's intricate details of the strategy. That's kind of the point of this video, and so you understand what you're doing. Let's say that we're just gonna buy and sell off of the line, right? Just to show you that instead of trying to get the more intricate details, but at least now you know how to move around these things and calculate things based on what you think is the best thing for you based on your strategy, right? What resources you have to bail yourself out from being liquidated external to what we have is gonna be an influence. Like all these considerations you need to make, and you need to know how this graph works in order to understand what calculations it's telling you and what are the repercussions for taking those steps, right? So let's just run through what is a more realistic scenario, right? Which is you buy, let's say the price is at 4,800 not too long ago. It hits where you could start buying and you say, not enough, I'm gonna wait till it drops even more, right? Which is one of the reasons why we put 15% to 35, because if 35%, you still didn't buy any. It had to be some amount less than the 35%, right? So by defining it at 15%, then if it does hit a 30% or some larger amount than 15, then there's a reasonable amount of debt you could take on, right? So that's one of the reasons why we pushed it up to 50. And so let's say that you buy it at the 3,300, okay, which is telling you 0.114 tokens for 375 DAI. Let's make that trade, okay? Then the price goes up to, let's say, 3,500, okay? And you sell just enough to get back onto the curve. And again, this dotted line tells you what this red line will be, right? So it's telling you it'll go down there. I also want to point out, the current amount of debt based on that last purchase, it still will liquidate, right? So you come over here and you say that 375 that we bought here, right, would liquidate when the price of ETH reaches $420, right? So as you're continuing to buy across this, you're just changing where that is. And so if you buy at the end, it'll end up going exactly right there. If you don't buy at the end, if you only bought there, it would still liquidate less than what your calculated amount is, right? This is for calculation purposes. It is not the actual, right? And so the actions that you take will affect that. So for example, if you change the graph in such a way that you took on a bunch of debt high up, then even if later you try to change the graph to like a lower liquidation price, like because you took the previous debt at that higher price, like that's unchangeable unless you're willing to accept a loss, which I don't agree with, or you should just wait till the price goes up to that level again to unwind what you did there as opposed to taking a loss, right? Just know that like this is a calculator and it's based on actual things that you've done and the settings that you put in, right? But it is still a calculator, right? And it can't do magic. It can't unwind previous mistakes that you've made in your past, right? It can only help guide you in what you do moving forward, right? So, okay, so it's at 3,500. Let's say that you sell. Okay, so get you back on the curve, drops to 3,300 again. You buy there. Maybe we hit one more cycle at 3,500, lock in a little bit of a net gain. By the way, when you lock in this net gain, you end up having a net gain in tokens, right? So the net increases tokens, which means the next buy is at a larger scale. So if we do one more cycle of it, right, each time it's increasing. So let's pay attention to what that is. So we're selling 93.876, right, which is 0.27. So let's do that fake sale. Let's move over here to 3,300, right? And we're buying $94 worth, right? So let's buy that. And then selling again, it is $94 worth, but the change is, and this is too small of a window and it's too high of a range. If I was doing this closer to here, it would be a bigger impact. So we'll do it again when we get down there. Okay, so you buy, sell, taking a small gain in tokens with each one. Let's start going some bigger swings. So let's do the buy at 3,000 and then let's change the price over here to 2,800 and let's get another purchase in there at 2,800. Then let's say it goes back up to 3,000 and we're going to sell just enough to get back onto the curve. So we sell there. Then it drops down to, let's go more extreme, let's say 2,400. We buy at 2,400, goes back up to 2,800, let's say. Okay, we sell at the 2,800, lock in that net gain in tokens. Let's drop the price to 2,200. So we're getting bigger swings, right? So you'd make a purchase here at this price, change it to 1,800. So we'll go even lower. Okay, so we make this purchase, and then let's say that's the lowest that it goes is that 1,800, okay? And then let's say it goes up to 2,400, and you say, okay, that's enough. I should probably take a little bit of a profit there. And so you sell at that point. Then it goes back to 2,200, and so you're able to buy again at this 2,200 price. And then let's say it starts to rally up and we get it to 2,800 again. So you end up selling a little bit at this 2,800. And then let's say the price goes back down to 2,400. Let's put the price to, let's do a huge jump. Let's go to 3,000 and let's put that in there. Let's say that you sell at 3,000 and there's a lot of sell pressure at 3,000, price goes down to 2,800. So let's say you get one more buy-in right there, and then the price starts to just really go up, to, let's say to 3,500, okay? And you look at that and you say, should I sell right now or should I wait? Because if you wait, you'll end up taking a larger gain in tokens, but if you sell right now, you'll be able to buy, because right now, if you look at this intersection point, you can't buy till 2,800, and that's $700 from now. So maybe what you say is, okay, let's sell a little bit of it, and let's move this down so that the intersection point is at 3,200, let's say, okay? And so we put that where it says the intersection point's 3,200, right around there. And so let's sell that amount, okay? So it sells just enough to create the intersection point is now at 3,201 where I put it. And then let's say the price does drop down to 3,000. That was a smart move, right? You're able to buy a little bit when, if you didn't make that previous sale, you couldn't buy any at all, right? Okay, so let's make that purchase at 3,000. And then let's say the price goes all the way up to this max. Then it's telling us to sell $582 worth, 0.121, right? Pays off all of the debt completely, and we take a net gain in tokens, so let's see what that is. And that is 1.19. So in this case, that up and down cycle, it multiplied by 0.19, right? Or we're gonna round up to 0.2. So the reality is I tried to speed this up for making this video shorter, but all of those buys and sells would have happened on a much greater scale. Let's say that there was 3 times as much, then because of the increased scale of each time you buy slightly more, it may have an impact as if it had 4 times the gain, which would then put it on par with buying at the bottom. The best thing to do is if there's a complete V shape and you pick the absolute bottom and then it goes right up and you're able to sell at the top, that would be the absolute best thing to do. However, nobody has a crystal ball. And because nobody has a crystal ball, number one, you don't know when it's going to hit a bottom, and you don't know what price that bottom's going to be. So by spreading it out over the spectrum, you can keep doing these buys and sells, and depending on the actual mechanics of what the market does, these little gains of buys and sells could outperform spending no debt until the maximum, that crystal ball ideology, which nobody has. But it could still outperform it. If there's enough up and down cycles, it would still outperform it. So because you don't have a crystal ball, the basis of the strategy is to pick and choose when you think you should be buying and selling off of the curve. And that strategy is going to be based on what you think is the best time to do it. And we will be building tools to help you analyze things like, okay, if I sold later, how much more would I gain, kind of thing, and some tools to give you some moving averages. I know there's all sorts of other applications that will tell you pricing, and so our focus at CiMPLE is not to recreate things that already exist. Our focus at CiMPLE is to create the things that don't exist, because in the meantime you could use these other things that exist, and then if we can improve upon the other things that exist, we will do that, right? And so we're looking at graphing data where we can kind of analyze it in a way that a novice would be able to visually look at it and get better information out of it than if they looked at something that was really complicated and didn't understand what they were looking at, right? So we are trying to do that. And there's lots of other little intricacies, but the main thing is you've got this ideal loan to value, okay? You define it based on when do you start buying, when do you liquidate, when do you stop buying. Again, the difference between a liquidation price. Liquidation price is when they're actually going to start selling your assets in order to pay down the debt, which is a terrible situation to be in. If you bought your assets at $3,500 and they're forcing you to sell them at $1,200, they're forcing you to take a loss. Don't, that's the worst situation. Don't get yourself in there. Watch the other videos on insurance and understand how that works, right? And then the other thing that we didn't cover in this is maximizing yield, right? So if you're maximizing yield, and you'll learn about it more in the other video, but if you're taking those reward tokens and using it to pay down the debt, then you have more debt available to buy on the next dip. Or you swap those reward tokens for more ETH and you have more collateral, which because you have more collateral, you have more debt that you could take on, right? So both of those increase your multiplying ability. It is stacked on top of each other, strategy 1 and strategy 2, right? But if, like I said at the very beginning of this video, if there was only one thing to focus on, it would be buying the dip. Everything else is just meant to amplify your ability to buy the dip, and all of it results in multiplying your tokens, right? That's the end result. That's the goal that we're going for, is you have X quantity of tokens now, and you want a multiple of X into the future, and the way that you do that is by buying the dip and then selling it. And so we take this graph, right? This gives us the ideal loan to value to be at, and you can sell on and off of the graph, or you can get more intricate and click and drag, right? So that you choose different amounts to buy or sell, right? And so all of this works together. If you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe, and in the comments below, please put anything that maybe didn't make sense, because all of these videos are all going to be redone. And so we are going to be reading the comments. We want to know what you think could be improved upon, or the next version of this video is going to be improvement on this video. So please let us know what we can improve on. Watch the other videos, start multiplying your tokens.